How y'all doing? How y'all doing? For sure. Listen, Granny said God don't make no junk. This black skin more like gold than no sugar, no cream needed. Don't cover the dream. I'm gonna ask you a question. What's the fair wage price for your child to be a cotton picker? Raise your hand if you can answer. I know I can't. And this question came to mind as we began to travel to the roots of coffee in Africa. You see, they say there's only 60 harvests left, and then there's no more coffee. They cite things like global warming, they cite things like the changing environment, but there's something they never talk about. What is the state of the seed? Is it doing well? How does it feel about itself? You see, the first time I went to Africa, I was handed this small cherry. Green at the time, it would eventually become red to be ripe, but I always heard that coffee was a bean. I guess colonizers don't know what to do with the thing, you know what I'm saying? See, I grew up on my grandmother's farm hulling peas, picking them out of pods. When I went to Ethiopia, they handed me a tropical cherry, and it blew my mind. I was like, this is coffee? Nobody ever told me this story. When my dad would hand me coffee in the morning asking, hey son, you want to drink your coffee black today? The answer was definitely no way. Only way you would catch me sipping on coffee is with like a little bit of that powdered creamer and the sugar. We mixed that junk up, put a couple drops on it. I called it a Trappuccino. You know what I'm saying? But I realized there was a story about coffee I had never heard. This is my grandmother, called her Granny. Granny picked 600 pounds of cotton a day, most of her life. She outpicked the men and the women. When she had my mother, she went back and picked 300 pounds the next day. And she didn't do this because she wanted to. She did this because she was a dark-skinned woman from Alabama. This is what she had to do. And she did it so that my mother and I would not have to. So my mom went to college and got degrees. I went to college and got master's degrees. But every summer as a child, my mom would take me back to that farm, and my uncles would make fun of me because I didn't know what to do with the soil. They said, you're too citified, boy, you gotta get in it. But my grandmother taught me a lesson that helped me understand why so many African youth are leaving the farms that their grandparents picked a different kind of crop on. You see, coffee is a $500 billion industry, and yet Africans receive less than 1%, even though in 850 BC they discovered it, even though their labor generated this industry to be what it is alongside our indigenous cousins. They received so little of the fruit of their labor, it's no wonder they didn't want to return to those roots. Sometimes we don't think about what we put in our bodies. Go to the next slide. Even in our communities today, we see coffee shops popping up in gentrified neighborhoods, and yet, even though the seeds they're sipping from come from soil stained with blood from black and brown hands, when you look inside the shop, you see very few black and brown faces. And so my trip to Ethiopia taught me that this story we see about our soil, though painful, is not the only story we have to draw from. There is another. In fact, the question I would ask is, what if, instead of from the colonizers who stole it in 1616, from Italy and from France, what if my grandmama was right? What if God really don't make no junk? And the people who first discovered this plant had a purpose beyond just picking it. Maybe they had something to teach us about what this plant meant for us. This is Ture Waji. They call him the king of the Guji. He's in the Guji zone of Ethiopia, one of the most foremost coffee researchers in the world. In the language of Ethiopia, they call him the Guji Negus. He taught me more about coffee in the 2 weeks we spent with him in 2021 than I learned from any barista class, from any brother with a British accent trying to teach me about French presses and pour-overs and espresso extraction. You see, they say that coffee has more flavor possibilities than wine, whiskey, and every fine spirit put together. And yet the blackness of the cup is so rarely reflected in the faces of those who serve it to us. Maybe there's a story beyond the cup. My wife and I had the chance last year to partner with Vanderbilt to host the world's first ever Pan-African Black Barista Exchange program. Thank you so much. This came on the heels of my wife winning, alongside the rest of the company, world's most notable roaster. We were the first people, We were the first people from Tennessee to ever be nominated, let alone win. The only other American roaster nominated was somebody from Portland. And that makes sense, right? But in this space, we met a group of people who have been hosting and holding coffee's true meaning for over 2,000 years. We met the Gada system, hosted by men and women elders called Abagadas and Adasinkes. And in that room, with 7 other Black American baristas experiencing coffee's original root for the first time, we were blessed. We were named honorary Abagadas and Adasinkes, my wife and I, for the work we were doing based on a belief from my grandmother that God don't make no junk. So we said, what would it look like for us to flip that? Because, I started out as an MC. This all used to be merch for my music. Then the merch outsold the music. And my wife was like, yeah, do that. But I still got a little hip hop in me. And so what would it look like if we flipped the sample? Word to my brother. Not to copy it, but to contextualize it in the streets of Memphis. Well, it might look like an anti-gentrification coffee club. And that's what we built in the hood in Memphis, trapping. Coffee roaster in the back, bricks of beans on the table, little homies coming in, learning how to take an economic model that had always been applied to something that they called a black market. We're gonna make it black a different way, right? And in this space, we began to imagine what would it look like if we received coffee from its original indigenous African elders. And this space led us to another building. This building here was something that was akin to a coffee bean. You see, when they look at coffee, all they see is something broken, needing to have additional additives made to make it better. This building, 3386 Bowen, was something we all drove by growing up in the hood every day. And yet this space had the potential to become something beautiful. But in order to truly make it what it was meant to be, we had to understand that this land needed new kinds of seeds. These seeds here are roasted coffee beans. You're probably familiar with this. Again, I tell you that the possibility here is more brilliant and more beautiful than we're told. They say blackness is bland. But all artists know black is not the lack of, but the presence of the creator's full palette, these rooted hues. What if we honored them? How black would we be and how blessed would the world be because of it if we allowed it to shine instead of just covered it? The land that we went to was stained with pain. Just 2 weeks ago, we finally signed the purchase agreement on the land, something we had spent $320,000 and 4 years working on. We were proud. But after researching the nature of the land, we realized that where we were planting these seeds from the motherland already had a different kind of story planted in it. Apparently, this land was a part of a 900-acre cotton field, the John Pope Plantation. As an aside, if you go to my hood, Pope Street is where all the pimps at, where all the prostitutes is at, and where all of the methamphetamine is. I think there's a story that the soil is holding on to we weren't meant to carry. And so we had to re-engage with the land to begin to see a new type of story. These coins acted like seeds. Just 2 days ago, a brother brought these to our shop. Booker T. Washington silver dollars. Never seen that before. But they were brought to me by the hands of a white man. A white man who told me that his great-grandfather was a sharecropper who worked alongside African Americans. And he said that his great-grandfather would receive all the money because the landowner didn't think that the black farmers were worth paying. And he said he would take that money to the bank daily or weekly when he received it, and he would exchange those dollar bills for these strange coins. I asked him, why? He said, because the people I work alongside have dignity. I respect them, and the world does not. And though I'm just a sharecropper, I want to use what I have when I can to show I respect these men and women. And so he would pay them in these dollars. And I'm excited because the investment was a $100,000 investment. It's the biggest we've ever received into building the supply chain. But what makes me even more excited is a different seed I received just a few days earlier. This seed was from Miss Bernice. Miss Bernice don't got $100,000. Miss Bernice get $900 a month. But she been supporting us since day one when these weird black dudes pulled up with the pour-overs in the middle of the hood and started talking about making it black again. Miss Bernice came through on a day when we were dealing with a lot of difficulty, and she said, here, God told me to give you this. I want to invest in your business. And you know, traditionally, you can't receive investment from everyday people like you and me, like Miss Bernice. You have to be accredited. And we know what that means. You gotta have generational wealth, something a lot of us don't have. But when we decided to take revenue for our business, we decided we would take it from everyday people, found a way to take investments as low as $100 so that over 500 people in our community could invest $323,000 for us to refurbish this building. Yeah. And we still going. So the investment from the brothers who came in and said that their great-grandfathers were sharecropper was just them following the honor that the root already gave itself. And that is how I believe we build community in coffee. That's how we build community with all of our seeds, is that we say we deserve to see ourselves reflected first because the workman deserves to enjoy the fruit of their labor. Amen? Amen. This is Miss Bernice and my wife at a dinner we hosted just this past Sunday. She was able to be seated at the head of the table, a seat of honor, because she brought all she had. And in that space, yeah, clap it up for Miss Bernice, yeah, for sure. And in that space, we were able to reimagine a whole other reality for us in coffee, a space where we could sit at the table that we built ourselves, that we can enjoy the fruit of our labor, where Memphis hip-hop legends like 8 Ball would sit across from brothers who used to be sharecroppers, and we could imagine a world where coffee was black and beautiful. No need for no sugar or cream, because at the end of the day, we all share the same roots. And this story, I believe, is one that's not just possible in Memphis, not just possible for me or my wife or Miss Bernice, but it's possible for all of us. This young man, Omarion, was our first barista when he was 10. Now he opens the shop and dials in shots of espresso every morning. This is a reality we can have, and we're inviting you to join us. If you want to honor your root, if you want to reclaim this seed, not just as a means of consumption, but a space where we must have, as the elders say, coffee and peace. Bunaf nagea hindabina. May your house lack no coffee nor peace. If you want to join that journey with us, we invite you to honor our root. On your table, there are cards, and if there aren't, there are some in the back. But I want to let you know that coffee is back and it's black. Thank you for your time.